What's up, Squadron? Aviation has given me a ton of amazing experiences.
Good job there. Nice rock, high wing.
But more importantly, it's introduced me to a whole new family of friends.
Like, dude, you're killing it. You're having a great day.
So just never give up.
Airport, and then, oh, by the way, I got carb ice while I was flying through, so the engine started running rough. I had to
Join us tonight as we're cleared direct for some hangar flying. I am Bryon Bowman, and this is SuperAero Live.
That's a lot. I mean, a lot of cookies. What's up, Av Geeks? It's so exciting to be here with you on Wednesday. And you know what Wednesday means. It can only mean one thing. It's time for another episode of SuperAero Live. Before we get started, I gotta say hi to a couple people in the chat. Rusty's here. Rusty, I haven't seen you in a while. Great to see you. Rusty, Waukesha Pilot's here. AirTech Coatings is here. I wonder why. Great to see you, my friends at AirTech that I met down at SwampSTOL this past week. Zach Sherman's here. Sarah Clucky's here. James is here. Jonathan Christman's here. Gary Smith. Woo! 782 Papa. Gotta say hi to him. Man, TJ's here. TJ's, that's new. Parody Show's here. Nathan Ballard's here, causing trouble. Ken Dodson, what is up? Everybody, it is so awesome to see you this week. I'm gonna introduce our guest in just a second. That's Jay's mom.
Shit.
You can hear Jay. Wait, why is this not working? I'm trying to very professional here. How come it's not? There we go. Jay's mom is here. Well, let's introduce Jay. So I was gonna talk about SwampSTOL and all this stuff, but let's be real. You're not here for hearing about that, other than you should check out the live stream of that. It's kind of long, but it was pretty epic. It was very hot. But I want to introduce my friend that I met at Sun and Fun a couple months ago. Jay Stanford's here. What? Welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, Ryan.
It is so good to see you. We were hoping to see each other at SwampSTOL, but weather got. I think that's like the one variable with NationalSTOL that I was talking to folks about. It's just like, how do you, like, especially in aircraft designed for STOL, a lot of them aren't capable of like messing with any sort of weather. So you always have this variability the day before the competition. It's like, who's gonna make it in? And so you had some weather, so you couldn't make it in.
Right. Yeah. The weather getting there wasn't the problem. It was the forecast and what we were seeing for getting home, and it wouldn't have worked out. I mean, Florida was socked in on Sunday, so.
Yeah, I mean, even on Saturday, some of the competitors that live in other parts of Florida that weren't as weather heavy were like how close to home am I gonna get?
yeah, that's the thing. We're not going very fast, so it takes a long time to get there, and you don't dodge storms very good. So.
Right. Well, and then I don't know. Maybe some of folks are running IFR panels, but I can't imagine a lot of them are.
I'm sure some of the Legend Cubs are equipped, but I know I'm sure not. I don't even have a panel, so.
No, and I was joking before the show. We filmed a little episode that I'm editing right now about your plane and stuff, and I was hoping to show some of the footage tonight and had some technical issues with that. But the panel on your plane we're going to talk about it a little bit, but it's Spartan.
That's putting it lightly. Yeah, it's everything you need and nothing you don't. And there actually is no instrument panel. It's just the airspeed in the altimeter and a set of gauges about that big, and then engine down the sides so I can see what's going on up front. And that's it. I fly with a GPS that I take out for the competitions, and that's all there is to it. That and a cell phone.
That's all you need, man. It's 2021.
That's right. Don't get high enough to lose signal, so everything works out.
So let's take a step back. So just to recap for folks, we met at Sun and Fun this past year, Sun and Fun 2021. It's funny, on my desk, I still have, I was like, just thought it was so cool. I still have like my parking pass, but they all said, everything from Sun and Fun said 2020 on it, because they like must have reused the stuff from the year they canceled with all the COVID garbage. But there's not anything there's nothing. I was like, did I just show something I shouldn't have? It's just a parking pass. But anyway, so we met down there during the NationalSTOL demo. It wasn't technically a competition, although you guys and gals did get quite competitive. And you are, I think, it's experimental bush. Is that the class? Bush. But that's the class for NationalSTOL. But you've built. I mean, we're going to talk about your competitive stuff. But I think first, before we dig into the STOL stuff and that beautiful plane, well, there's two planes behind you, but the blue one behind you. I'm wondering if we could just start maybe at the beginning. I kind of start these shows always with the origin, like what's the J origin story? Like, how did you find flight?
So I've uniquely don't have a memory of my first flight. It happened with my dad in a J3 when I was an infant. So I've been around aviation my entire life. It's part of our family. It's part of our, I don't want to say our culture, but it's part of our heritage. My dad ran a repair station at Craig Airport in Jacksonville. I grew up there. Skipped forward to 2000, moved up to St. Mary's, ran the FBO here till the airport was shut down. Now we're on a grass strip here at GA 36. I soloed on my 16th birthday in a Taylorcraft that we still have. It's hanging right up there above us.
Oh, is that the star that?
See if I can put it.
Oh, yeah.
Put the ceiling up there. So I flew that, soloed it on my 16th birthday, got my license on my 17th in a Tomahawk because I couldn't find anybody to do it in a tail wheel, and have kind of decided early on that flying wasn't going to be my career. I don't know exactly why. At the time it didn't seem to be the right thing to do. So it's just been a hobby of mine, and I've been flying tail wheels for 24 years. You can do the math.
That's awesome. And what's also awesome is that there are a lot more airplanes in your background than I think I realized.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them in here right now.
See,
it's always a project going on around here. There's airplanes coming and going. Dad likes to tinker and restore airplanes, and that's what he does to pass the time.
That's amazing. And separately, I have my dad used to fly a Taylorcraft when he was like, I don't know if we talked about this at Son of Fun. He flew a Taylorcraft when he was in his 20s. He was like part of a flying club that had one, and I've been kind of following that plane around. You know, he flew it in the 60s, and it's like been to this place and went to Michigan and got wrecked. Then it got rebuilt, and then it was a guy in Iowa had it, and we went and saw it, and then he sold it to a guy in Washington, and then he crashed it into some power lines and sold it to another person, like in like Virginia. I'm just like, I don't know. I got to do an episode about that thing, but that's so cool. So I mean, basically, like an aviation family. So talk to me then. That could go a lot of different ways. I want to show folks. I mean, the reason why we're talking tonight is this thing. That's from Sun and Fun. Woo, that's a photo.
Sheldon, good picture, man. Probably my favorite picture of the airplane. That's a takeoff, and that was the day before the final day, and I think that was those all were pretty consistent around 42 to 41, 42 feet.
So I guess maybe what we should talk about is what. Whoop, wrong button. Whoop, wrong button again. Oh, we're off the rails. I got the right button eventually. In terms of national, so do you compete in any other STOL events, or is NationalSTOL mostly where you spend your time?
NationalSTOL right now is the focus of what we're flying around to do. There's a few others that I really enjoy doing. New Holstein, supercub.org puts on a Super Cub fly-in, and they run an amazing event up in New Holstein. It coincides with Oshkosh, and it's just across the lake. So a lot of the same competitors that are in the National STOL events are up there at New Holstein. They do an excellent job.
And that's
I'll pick up a local one here and there just to go do a demo, but for strictly competition, it's NationalSTOL and New Holstein mostly.
And I'm going to try to make it up to New Holstein one of these years. That airport is my white whale airport. Every time I've tried to land there, the winds shift or something, and it doesn't feel okay. But that was mostly in my tailwheel days, so maybe now that I've got a nose dragger, I could make it happen a little bit more. But so the way NationalSTOL works, I'm just gonna do like a real quick overview for folks. Is there's a line painted on the runway. You can see it behind Jay's, like these orange cones kind of behind Jay's airplane there. The aircraft takes off from the line as quickly as possible, trying to get to the air as quick as possible. You know, we're talking, like Jay, you mentioned, like 50-ish feet on that last day, which is kind of insane. That's about the length of an F-14 Tomcat. That's my, like, one piece of nerd knowledge. And then you guys go around a traffic pattern, come in and land as close to the line without landing before it, and then stopping as hard or as quickly as possible. And those two scores are like the composite score, and that's how everyone's graded. So you guys you're competitive there. You're doing that competition, but I guess before you got there, like I was on the mic announcing, and people were saying like, you can't call Jay's plane just like a Super Cub, because that is not accurate. And the reason the reason it's not accurate is this photo. Basically,
that was about 4 years into a 5-year build. My father and I scratch built this airplane. 5 years of Saturdays is what we like to say, but it was usually about a couple Thursdays here and there, and a whole lot of research, a whole lot of digging. That was, man, looking back at just that picture, it's crazy to think about it. It took 2 years to build the wings, and we're all watching Mike Patey stuff, and he's banging out an airplane every 8 months, and it's an amazing work of art. And I don't know how he does it, but what we did there was we're always, like I said, we're always building something. There's always something going on in the shop. I'm sitting next to a Lancer right here that they put a motor on, and one of the things that we were doing is we were rebuilding a Cherokee 180. That was just the airplane we were playing with at the time, and it never really put any passion into what we were doing, and so it just kind of sat there. We'd tinker on it, we'd put some time into it, we get bored, we go do something else. And then we were looking for a propeller for a Pawnee, and calling around. The guy said, yeah, I had one, but I sold it. It came off of a Super Cub. And Dad said, well, what do you know about the Super Cub? And the guy said, man, it's garbage. It's just a ball. You can't even, there's no value here. And, well, what do you mean there's no value? We got a couple pictures of it, and it was a absolute, just a mess of chromoly. And we went down and got it, and got this chunk. And what you're seeing here is not what we used. We used that chunk to basically build a 3D frame jig that got the gear attach points, the wing attach points. We got measurements off of supercub.org, has a link to a bunch of the plans. Christian Sturm has all the plans on his Super Cub site. All of them. They're all freeware. Any bracket, bolt, fixture, anything you need is available for a Super Cub. And I had been on supercub.org doing research for the Taylorcraft there's a lot of good information on there. And since 2006, well, I want to say 2009 is when we started this. And I contacted a couple of people, and, is there anybody that has a jig? Is there anything that we can get? And there was nothing. You basically had to build your own jigs. So we built a jig. Every single tube, on that fuselage myself or my father has welded.
Wow.
We took the chunk, and it's neat. You can go on supercub.org or Google Our Cub Project, and you can. I put the whole build on there. It's 30 pages long, and pictures and explanations and discussions, lots of different things. And the airplane is basically a snapshot of what people were doing in 2009 for Super Cubs, and they're constantly evolving, constantly. A lot of the things that are on the Blue Cub, if I were to build one today, which my wife would kill me if I brought that up, would be completely different. I mean, there's so many different available materials and technologies and placement of things. I mean, without getting into any kind of secret squirrel stuff, but what you're seeing there is 2 years of scratch-built wings. I mean, I'm talking building the leading edges, drilling every hole in the spars, building the ribs, setting the wing tables up. It was and figuring out how we were going to rig the airplane, because it's not a Super Cub when you get down to it. The wings are a foot longer. The ailerons are longer. They're pushed out on the end of the wings. The flaps are inboarded and they're extended. We have 3 hangars instead of. It just goes on and on and on and on. And we did not build that airplane to be a STOL airplane. It just happened that at New Holstein, we flew the airplane up there the first year just to go to the Super Cub, fly in with our Super Cub, and there was a STOL competition. Nobody practiced. The airplane was on 26-inch Goodyear tires. It had nothing done to it. It had a cruise prop on it, and we went up, and this is one of my favorite stories about one of the most influential people in my STOL career. We were flying in the STOL competition. Dad was flying after I was. We both wanted to fly in it, and I took off. Pretty good takeoff. Nothing like we're doing these days in anywhere. It wouldn't even be competitive, I don't think. And a guy that I knew only in name took off 2 planes before me, and it was Bobby Breeden. And I mean, anybody that's in this game knows he's a Valdez champion and just a really good guy and a killer Cub pilot. And he took off, and I took off, and I heard the call. What did he do? What was his number? And that really kind of stirred the whole thing for me, and landed, and I blew the landing. Bobby, of course, won the competition, and we started talking a little bit there. And then about 8 months later, I met him at one of the local Georgia fly-ins that we go to, and he walked up and he said, "Hey, I'm Bobby Breeden." And I said, "I know who you are." And he said, "This is a cool looking plane. Can I fly it?" And I said, "Sure." And he was the 3rd person to fly the airplane, and we have been really good friends ever since. And a lot of the stuff that the airplane has morphed into is a direct result of Bob and Bobby schooling and coaching and helping out. I mean, they know I'm not a competitor against them up in Valdez, because I'm not flying a Cub to Alaska from Southeast Georgia. I don't see that I have the 2 weeks necessary to make the trip. But that's kind of the story of how the Blue Cub, which is actually model JS Cub. My dad's name's Jay, my name's Jay, my son's name is Jay. We call him Trip. And that's why it's not a Super Cub. But in all practical purposes, it is, because we built it off the plans.
So
long story.
Oh, sorry. So that's awesome. So the thing that as you've been telling that story, some people have some questions for you. So we're gonna ask some questions real quick. First of all, a couple of people to say hi. Anitra from NationalSTOL is in the chat. Hey, Anitra. We had some fun down there. We all stayed in this crazy Airbnb, and like some animal tried to get in at night. It was amusing. And there was someone else. Kayla McLeod's in the chat saying, "Go Jay!"
Hey, Kayla.
looks like she's got a Piper Cub in that photo there. That's super cool. So here's one of the questions that came in was Zach Sherman's wondering, did you guys design anything in CAD or did you just go like old school?
No, the prints are all hand drawn Piper prints, and I would print them out on a plotter, and sometimes in scale if I could get close enough, and a lot of times we're just going off measurements. No CAD.
Okay, so it's literally just making sure that it like literally
a lot of
old
tape
school.
measures, a lot of squares, a lot of levels.
Gotcha. That's like that. That's kind of fun because to me, what's interesting about that is, you have like when you're flying a Cub, a lot of times you're doing that you draw the pencil line on the sectional, and then you're looking out the window for the line you drew, right? Like that's just super cool to me, like that you would then build one separately with a plotter and all that stuff. It's like keeping it true to the vintage idea. And a question, maybe a little bit competition question from Marty here. He's asking, most planes have a longer takeoff roll. Man, I am not getting these comments to look good tonight. Oh, it's getting even worse. I think it's because Marty asks such verbose questions. Most planes have longer takeoff roll than a landing roll. Is it the same for STOL planes? 41 to 42 feet of takeoff roll is insane to me. What are your landing distances like?
So that day it was a 41 and a 72 foot landing, I think was the best cycle. And when I say cycle, like he was saying, it's a line, and you take off past the line and you land past the line, and we call it a scratch if you land before the line, and that cycle is one takeoff and one landing, and they have to be in the same use. You don't get the best takeoff of the day and the best landing of the day combined in. Usually that's not the rules. So a 41 and a 78, my airplane lands longer than it takes off. A lot of people's airplanes are set up different. When you go look at Steve Henry's stuff, and I think even his landings are a little bit longer, but he's grouped closer together. He's a lot lighter and has a lot more power too.
Yeah, his thing is basically a helicopter. Yeah. There's a reason for the class system, right? And even that
Absolutely
feels a little unfair with him being in the same class as just like a guy in a Piper Cub, or someone who's in a Ronca C3 down at Swamp STOL.
What we say as a group, because like you said, even at the demo at Sun and Fun, it's a demo. Every single one of us knew exactly what our numbers were, knew exactly what everybody else's numbers were. We were talking about them every night. It is a competition every time we get together and fly. Yeah, it doesn't matter if we're in a field with a flower line, and that's just the nature of the distances. I mean, that you're measuring something, so it is a competition. And to say that what Steve has is unfair is, man, this is controversial, but I almost believe that that's unfair to say, because you can take somebody and stick them in Steve's airplane, and they're not going to do what Steve does. You're riding somebody else's horse at that point. And to be in, I mean, when we set up for a competition a month ahead, I've painted a line on the runway. I've painted lines down the runway measuring distances, and we practice for a month. In the last 2 weeks of that, you're doing 30 cycles a day, which is a lot, when you're refueling and you're trying not to get heat stroke because it's the middle of summer and you're practicing. And to say that I could get in Steve's airplane and do what Steve does is no different than saying Steve could get in mine and do what I do. It's just, and I like what Steve's done with it. He's taking it to the level that it will be. And there's a lot of people building really high-end race planes right now. And NationalSTOL and a couple other people are driving this. I mean, there's a lot of development going on right now that is probably going to push clunkers like this thing out of the competition. I mean, I'll be there because I love it. I absolutely love it, and I love the guys and the gals. Sorry, Jaden. And I love being there and just the camaraderie and the and being part of it. But man, when those props are spinning, we aren't friends anymore. If you're in my class or you're in somebody else's class, we are absolutely fighting. But
Absolutely. Well, and I think the big thing is Doug Jackson was on the show before Sun and Fun, and he was talking about maybe breaking that light experimental and light sport out, because you've got these very purpose-built experimental planes like Steve Henry's plane or Hal Stockman's plane, competing against like bone stock, J3 Cubs or whatever, and so that feels a little disparate. But one of the things that you made me think of, the someone else's horse thing, is that in that class, even, right, like, it's so interesting to watch all of you have different approaches to how to get things done. So you brought up Steve. Like, Steve is like super high horsepower approach to the problem, like the STOL problem. And Hal, on the other end, is like he's like the Lotus. He's like Lotus of airplanes. Like, he's like just like lightness and standard power and like tons of lift, right? And so it was really interesting at Swamp STOL. I think Hal in a plane with like 200 less horsepower or something like that.
He was within 14 feet of him.
Yeah,
we were all rooting for him because one day somebody's going to beat Steve.
Yeah,
one day somebody beat Steve.
Totally different approach to the same problem, right? And that's what's super cool. I think that you see the same thing in your class or in the other classes, right? Like, there's always like because it's defined by gross weight mostly, it's just like you've got all this room to like chisel out your attack, the way that you attack the problem. And I want to be clear, like, I'm pretty sure at Sun and Fun, even though it was just a demo, like, you like kind of destroyed the competition at Sun and Fun, I think, in your class. Am I remembering that correctly?
I don't want to say destroyed them, but I definitely had a
trying to be
couple
polite.
good days there. Yeah, absolutely.
So
this airplane does really good. It's set up really well for its weight class, and with the practice and the constant work that we're doing to just improve it. I mean, I'm working on a newer technique right now, and something that'll change my approach path. Like you said, a lot of people come into, you're talking approaches like weight and horsepower, but the other thing you got to look at is how are people flying the airplane? And I'll go back, and what we all we'll go back and watch over and over and over how other people are flying the airplane and what their results are and what the conditions were. And we're getting down to where we know what the temperature was that day, and we kind of I know that there's people that are tuning their airplanes for different density altitudes. I mean, it's getting to that level.
There we go. That's awesome.
Yeah, we're getting kind of technical and kind of rambly here, but it's a lot more than just getting in the airplane and going up and trying to hit a line. There's a lot more to it than that. It's something that everybody can practice, and something that is, when you actually go and try to do it for the first time, it's very humbling, because most people will consider hitting the number is a really good thing. Well, a number is 100, maybe 200 feet long, and that doesn't even get you in the grouping. I mean, if there's enough people in your class, you won't even qualify. And getting out there and picking that you're going to hit the top of the 5 on runway 5, or the front of the stripe, and it, when you come into practice like that, it's really hard to do this kind of stuff by yourself, and that's where having a team really helps. And I'm lucky to have my dad as one of my absolute number one supporters and my teammate on this. I mean, I fly the airplane, but I could not do this without somebody on the ground. Like when we practice, he's out there every time, standing at the line or at the rotation point or the place where we want to rotate the airplane with a handheld, instantaneous feedback, constantly, over and over and over. Up, scratch, -10, +3, rotated too soon. I mean, all this stuff is it's an event and an orchestration before you get to the event. I mean, Steve has a trailer. He has a mobile repair vehicle, and I'm thank God that he does, because Lord knows I've used tools out of his trailer before to fix my airplane.
So, a couple things that popped up in my head while you were talking about this. One is you talked about, like, you know, the numbers being like 100 feet. Like, to put it in perspective for folks, like, even on like a light wind day, what made me think is Warren, who won the heavy touring class. Warren's in the chat right now saying hello. Right, careful. Warren in a Cessna 180, like very heavy comparatively airplane, is still putting in, like, you know, only like multi-100-foot scores total. Like, you're talking about like a big touring airplane is landing and taking off in, you know, only a couple hundred feet. And there was someone at SwampSTOL in a Cherokee 180. AirTech Coatings reminded me of that he says that the Cherokee at Jennings was consistent. And it's like, that was incredible too, to see someone in like kind of like a non-STOL airplane just like nailing it, putting in that practice, putting in that, like, it was all larger numbers, but it was consistent larger numbers. And that, I think we were talking in the booth about, like, if you are practicing this as a pilot and you're like really putting in the time, even if you're in a Cherokee, which isn't, again, classically thought of for that, that's something that suddenly, that Cherokee 180, the amount of like usable airports in the country has just like increased exponentially. Never mind like landing on the side of the mountain or whatever that you guys can do, right? But like, just like, you can suddenly, as these runways get shorter and shorter, you're still comfortable because you've been put in that time. All that to say, do you have sorry, I glanced down, Warren's like, easy do you have, as like a quite competitive STOL pilot, like, do you have advice for the pilots watching this at home right now who are wondering how they can apply what you're doing to their flying?
Advice, I'll tell you what I think. Practicing your skill and going out every time you go flying, and not just go poke a hole in the sky and say, oh, I went and did 5 touch and goes that day. Pick something and improve yourself, improve your skill set. Slow flight, steep turns. I mean, these simple things all add up and will allow you to learn your airplane better. Early days, I flew a spot landing contest against a guy in a pits, and he beat me in a pits. He could fly the pants off that airplane, and it really was humbling, because I thought, oh, here, I'm in a Super Cub, I can come to the line at 40 feet, or 40 miles an hour, drop the flaps, hit the line, stop, no big deal. This guy was coming in at 80 and hit that flower line so perfect 3 times in a row. I couldn't believe it. I watched him do it, and I talked to him, and he says, yeah, every time I land the airplane, I land it on the same spot on the runway every time. And if you can get out there and practice just hitting a spot, you won't believe how much better of a pilot you'll become, because of the control of speed and altitude. You're going to know exactly where you're going to hit, and planning for it. And what I try to tell people when we're coaching initially is, think about that as the edge of a mountain, that line. And landing past it is okay to a point, but do not land before it. And go out and practice. Just pick a skill. I don't care if you're in a 150 or a King Air or whatever. I mean, those guys obviously can hit the spot, because just go out and do something to improve your skill set. It doesn't have to be a STOL thing, but just keep pushing yourself, because you've got to be constantly learning on it and not let it get stagnant.
I think that's the thing that I'm kind of realizing is watching all of you do that, right? Like being super consistent, putting in that time seems to make a big difference. I mean, I think for me in my personal flying, where I'm at right now is I'm not super consistent because I'm not flying as much as you guys are. And I was saying the last time I flew a spot landing competition, I got second place, but it felt like luck, right? Like it felt like I was like, oh, like I put a bunch of things together. I like shook the bag and like, hey, like I managed to land right that time. And the goal is to have it not feel like luck anymore, right? To have it feel like it's actually you made it happen.
That does feel good when you nail it like that. But when that's a quartering tailwind and you took off in a headwind and you come back around, there is some luck in it. What we all say in the pits is we can beat ourselves any day. You never know who's really going to win, because you scratch 3 times, the guy next wins. He scratches twice, and now this third place guy wins. And so at any given event, the pilot can beat themselves. And I'll tell you that I've flown at Oshkosh in the STOL demo there. Was fortunate enough to get invited 3 times, and what an experience. The first time you turn base and you see 3,500 people lined up against the fence staring at you while you land, it's a little nerve-wracking. I did not make that landing. It was just garbage. I was instantaneously flooded with nervousness, and I'm sure other people deal with that different ways, but it was, there's a little bit of that when you're flying these competitions for the first time, and you turn and you see the line of people, especially these national STOLs that are so well attended. What are you showing that picture for?
Oh, I don't know. I was just trying to show other pictures. I wasn't trying to change the subject, although I realized as soon as it came up, I was like, oh, this is going to change the subject. Before we do that, I mean, one thing that happened this last weekend, which was really interesting, to kind of reiterate your point about what you were saying too about, everything you just said, and then what you're also saying about like the pilot. It's not just the aircraft; it's the pilot part of the equation. Was that people were talking in the Bush class, Austin Clemens, amazing pilot, 18-year-old kid who's got 1,600 hours of flying or something. He's got a reversible prop on his Husky, and that, to a lot of people, feels like an unfair advantage, because as soon as he gets his wheels down, he can throw that thing into beta, and it'll help slow him down. And during the finals, he was putting in consistent landings, and you'd hear the, he'd like bam, he'd go into beta every time. And now I'm failing as an announcer because I forget the name of the gentleman that was competing against him in a Cub type, but he had scratched the first 2 rounds and was like, it was like, all right, Austin's got this. Like, there's no way Austin doesn't have this. And in a comparatively stock airplane without a reversible prop, came in and just like nailed it. Stopped shorter, took off shorter, everything after 2 scratches.
Kevin Johnson in the yellow Super Cub.
Thank you. See, you should come be in the booth with me. Yeah, so Kevin just nailed it, right? And Austin's like, "What?" Out of nowhere. And I was like, that's amazing. That just goes to prove, like, even with all of you're talking about the pits, right? The pits versus the Cub, right? Like, all that stuff, in the end, you still need to be like, thank you. Everyone else is like, Kevin Johnson, Ryan. It was Kevin Johnson. I'm sorry. There were I had a lot of names to remember. Yeah, anyway, it's just another example of what you were saying. Hanger Tails in the chat, who I think is my friend Tom, says spot landing is like throwing darts on any day. Anyone can win, but anyone can lose. There, that looks better. Let's make that look a little more professional there. And then
Depends on the rules of the spot landing, but we won't get into that. A lot of people are just power off on downwind, and that you're throwing darts at that point. But at least in my game, because that's not how I don't land the airplane power off. It won't go as slow. And
so maybe that would be, before we talk about that photo that I teased. That you were like, why are you showing that photo? I don't know. I don't even know the story behind it. You sent it to me. It's your fault.
Fair enough.
Could you walk through for us, like, the technique, like, as much of your technique as you're willing to talk about, like, maybe, like, just a circuit? Because I think for folks, if you're like a standard Cessna pilot or something, these are all techniques that you would have learned, potentially, but they're all combined in a different way. I don't know if that's fair to say in your mind. To me, it's like, oh, there's like elements of slow flight. There's some specific stuff that's maybe a little different, but there's a lot of like basic stuff that's just like combined in a certain order to make it happen. Am I talking totally out of turn, or?
I can walk you through what I do, and you're asking a dancer how he dances, and I'll tell you how I do it. The takeoff. Most of us will tell you the takeoff is a pure timing thing. I can consistently hit the same takeoff. It's a 1/1000, 2/1000 pull. And in my brain, I do that. I'm listening to music. I listen to the same songs every time. It's kind of getting old, but it works. And 1/1000, 2/1000 pull from brake release. Now, setting up at the line is full power. I bring the tail up. My airplane will fly the tail off the line, and that lowers the drag of the wing. I mean, who knows if it all works, but it works for me. And I pull the stick back to the aft stop and the flaps back. I've got an overhead flap handle all the way to 60 degrees, full stick back, and the airplane will either jump off the ground or mush. And if you pull too soon, it just mushes, and you've added that right there was an absolute perfect hit. I mean, the flaps are fully deployed. You can see the elevator is all the way back at the aft stop, and you can see how hard the tail wheel hits the ground. That's actually dirt coming off the skateboard wheel, and the mains are off the ground. The airplane will, and the mains are what they measure us to. So the tail wheel being on the ground doesn't matter. You can drag the tail wheel all the way down the runway as long as the mains are off. And it's the last point that the mains touch. So if you settle back down from that point, your number touches where that spot was. But the part, I don't do a crazy climb out afterwards, because at that point I'm already at minimum airspeed for that angle of attack, because that's as deep as I can rotate to induce the lift on the wing. I'll level off, accelerate a little bit, start retracting the flaps, and start climbing up. Typically, our patterns have 4 to 5 airplanes in them. All of us are slow. All of us are timing on who lands first, and they still have to get off the runway. So you have to space yourself to keep yourself in your game that's in your head. Flying around the pattern, at that point, I'm cleaning the airplane up. I'm setting the trim for where I'm going to need it for landing. I'm still in the power band, but mostly around 65 to 70 miles an hour is about as fast as we go around the pattern. You're watching the guy in front of you, because you're not talking to anybody. You're just listening to the air boss saying 2's up, 3's up, 4's up, 5's up. Everybody's in the air. One lands, they usually will give a number or a scratch, and you're trying not to focus on all this stuff, because on base to final, your head's in the game, and you're focused on that line and your profile and your descent pattern and how you typically fly that approach. And on landing, if I've got a airspeed indicator on my wing that came off an ultralight, and because I'm slower than my airspeed in my airplane reads, and I look over at that just for a second, and if I'm not in that 35 to 40 mile an hour slot where the disc is flying, then I know I'm off and make corrections from there. But that at that point, I'm not looking at anything other than the line. And typically I'm not looking at the line as much as I'm looking at the cones, because like you saw in that picture, that white below the airplane is the line being blown away. By the time 5 or 6 people have taken off, the line's gone. That's all flour being thrown away from the airplane. That's not dirt. And so, or smoke, thank God. And so you're on landing. I'm looking at the cones. I usually pick the shooter, which is the guy that tells you to go when you take off, because he's usually standing right on the line. He's also the line judge. And I try to hit his feet. Not literally, but I try to hit his feet where the line should be. And if it's all good, you don't hear scratch in your ear, you come to a complete stop, you look over at the guy, hope that he's got your number right, he throws you down the line, and off you go, and you get back in line. Then you start to kind of regroup and breathe again, because it's not, I don't want to say it's stressful, but it's kind of intense. I mean, I enjoy it. I know Warren sweats a lot when he's flying. That's just all I'm going to say about that.
He got really quiet in the chat after he's like, I'm here. And I was like, hey, like, he did a good job in the heavy touring. And he's like, easy, guys. And then he went away. He's not talking as much smack as I thought he would.
That's good.
So, I mean, I think, what I hear when you talk about that is some of that stuff. Like, I mean, you guys are often like way behind the power curve coming in. That you talked about that, like flying slower, so you need I think it's like over your ear there, right? Like right behind you, like that ultralight.
Yeah, it's right there on the wingtip. It's a Hall meter, and they're real cheap from Spruce, and they bolt right onto your jury strut. You're like $25, and I saw it on a Quicksilver at Sun and Fun one time, and went, that is a really good direct reading airspeed indicator. And I have mine angled down so that when the wing is at the angle of attack that I'm normally going, it's actually reading the relative speed of the airplane through the air, not just the airspeed, but the weight. I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but it's angled so that when I pull it up and I'm in the landing attitude, it's actually straight ahead. Right. And it also serves another purpose on takeoff. Is a lot of guys will run a piece of yarn. Man, these are secrets. I don't know who's on this call, but a lot of guys will run a piece of yarn hanging from the strut, and what we're doing is kind of like what surfers do. We're timing the set, because you bring the power up, and the guy says go. Well, if you know you're right between a gust, you might sit there for a second and wait for that yarn to start moving, or I look for that disc to just go, and then I'll go as I think the disc is going to rise. And that's kind of a guessing game. But when you're fighting for feet, every little bit helps, and that's kind of what I use that for. But timing the wind sets on takeoff is kind of crazy to even talk about, but we do that. A lot of us do that.
No, I think Steve Henry talks about he's got like pieces of yarn hanging off of the struts, and he's looking for them to kind of start to wiggle a little bit. I think the other thing that I will say, I won't make you out it, but one of the things I've noticed is depending on the wind, sometimes people will be like taking off or approaching.
No, nobody ever does that. Nobody ever does that. That's illegal. You have to take off straight ahead and land straight ahead. You don't ever cut. No, none of us would ever do that. No, there's no advantage there.
Definitely never saw that.
You don't line up on one side and angle into the wind. That'd be terrible. That wouldn't be fair.
Yeah, it was a thing. Yeah, I think what's interesting to me is those types of things, right? When you think about how airplanes fly, and for instance, on I think it was Saturday at SwampSTOL, like the winds were fairly light. And so you started to see people really fight for every knot of wind that they could find to try to slow themselves down or get a little more lift to take off. So,
absolutely, so yeah. The wind is just free it's just free distance. I mean, those numbers that I put, that I said, 40s and stuff, that was in wind. I mean, that was absolutely at probably a 10 to 12 mile an hour day. I mean, it was pretty consistent. Usually it's about a 65 no wind off airplane and a 70 or 80 in. But that day the wind was just perfect. But we all get the same wind, so you're all on the same field for the most part. Now it'll shift between classes, and you'll start to see, like, as the classes progress, and so you'll start off earlier when the wind is higher, and as you get into that evening when the wind starts going off, you can watch the numbers start to grow versus what you would think that somebody's airplane would do, because we pretty much know what everybody's going to do within a set bracket. We have an idea of who's going to do what, and the wind is key. The wind is everything when you're doing this stuff, and figuring out how to measure it like that is one of the little tricks.
There you go. Everyone can go. I will double check that your plane, it's illegal to do that, but go put one of those things on your plane, and you can measure the wind. We are almost out of time, and I want to talk. Isn't that I told you, I was like, this could be over before you know it. We have to talk about this photo that you sent me that you didn't want to talk about. Let me find it. That photo, you said there's a story behind that.
There's two stories in that picture, and I'll be pretty brief about it. Kayla invited me up to Peach State Airdrome to fly a STOL demo, just a demo, just to go up and hang out and kind of do a couple laps around. Tony Zorn was there in the Swamp Monster. We were kind of up there playing and coordinating. And what you don't realize is how hard this is on your equipment, and having good landing gear is part of the deal. And what you're seeing there is a 31 bush wheel and a 606. And I had a Cleveland wheel blow up. Now, it didn't separate like they normally do, where a bolt will break and the half will come off and the tire will roll off. It actually blew. I hit the ground, and I had been consistently hitting the ground so hard that it sheared the lip off the wheel and actually shredded the bush wheel. And the bush wheel, there's an interesting video somewhere. I don't have it. That thank God it's not on YouTube. That you can see the airplane. So nothing hit. The wing didn't hit. The prop didn't hit. I shut the engine down, but the bush wheel came rolling up behind the airplane and just kind of fell over dead. And you don't have a spare bush wheel. I'm 400 miles from home. Nobody's got one in their hangar. But Atlanta Air Salvage just happened to be at the barbecue that we were at, and the guy said, "Oh yeah, no problem. I'll go grab a wheel. We're just down the street." And came back. We lifted the airplane up by the struts and stuck that wheel on, and that's how I flew it home. It took off a little funny, and it landed a little funny, and it cruised a little bit extra left rudder to get home, but it did just fine. And what you're seeing below the airplane there in that other picture is a 3-blade prop, and that's what I run in competition, and that's where I carry it when I'm going across country, because it goes 80 miles an hour. That black line that's sticking out between the gear and the airframe, and that's a cruise prop that I fly on there. I fly all Kato props right now. They've been great to me, and they do excellent for what I'm doing with the airplane. Obviously, it pulls pretty dang hard with a Kato on there.
So you mentioned that to me when we were at Sun and Fun, and I was like, I walked away going, like, how does he do that? And then sure enough, there it is, like hanging out. Yep.
Bolts onto a bracket on the float fittings and goes into a 3D printed holster on the front, and you don't even know it's there. It just flies right along.
You can kind of see it there, looking like wings off the, like below.
Yeah,
like it looks.
Jim Rader took all those photos at Peach State, and we did a few the day before the demo, and so there's a couple really good pictures of the airplane with the bush wheels on. And then when that happened, the next morning he goes, "You've got to let me take pictures of this. I'll never see this again." And he, like, that one was the day before, and that's a 3-blade that's on there, and you can see the brackets removed, and yeah, it's kind of a, and you can see the angle of the airspeed indicator right there in that picture also.
Oh, sure.
I'm pointing like a dummy, but there it is.
Some questions came in. This might, you mentioned it before. People are not, you mentioned it, but I don't know if people noticed. They're asking about tail wheel. They're saying no tail wheel, but you have a different. That's maybe the best picture for it. You have a little bit of a different tail wheel setup on the airplane.
Yeah, I in competition I run a skateboard wheel that I've modified to fit on top of a Scott 3200 head, so I can bolt that on and off. And the reason for that is it's just a little bit. I'm going to lie and say it's less drag, but it lets you rotate deeper so you can get more angle of attack. And I shouldn't have said that on live TV, but that's a pretty good little trick that we've come up with there. And it is a skateboard wheel, and it lasts about 25 landings, and then the bearings blow up, and you just end up dragging the hulk of the wheel around. So I carry 3 or 4 of them with me, but they go on and off pretty easy.
I think that's just a cool little like again, like all of you are doing these little different things to get the maximum out of your airframe, and that's I thought that was super cool. But in the grass at Sun and Fun, like the aircraft just looks like there's no tail wheel. Like you got like Hal runs a skid. Like I just assumed you were running a skid.
I'm probably gonna switch to a skid because it doesn't make any difference. You're not moving it on that tail wheel. If you saw us manhandling the airplane afterwards, you don't just push it like a normal Cub. It basically is a skid.
Although you have to be careful at NationalSTOL because sometimes the taxiway is over all the broadcast camera cabling, and if you're Hal and you take the skid over that cabling, you might sever.
Hal, tail hook your stuff.
You might sever all of the camera. All the camera feeds the morning of the competition. Maybe that might have happened. He felt. I mean, you know how he felt so bad about it, though. I wasn't there, but that's what I heard. I heard he felt.
Yeah, follow Hal on Instagram. Good luck finding him.
Right. One of your fellow competitors, Bobby Kerr, who was in a mall at Sun and Fun, it says thoughts on difference of taking off with 0 degrees or 10 degrees of flaps. So here we go. He's asking for the experience.
I accelerate. I rotate with full flaps. I accelerate with 0 flaps. And the reason for that is on this airplane, it doesn't help. And we've measured all kinds of different scenarios. Starting with 10 degrees of flaps, I found actually blanks a little bit of the tail off, and I need that tail back there to rotate the airplane. I believe you were flying a tricycle gear. Is that correct? Can I ask him a question? Is he answering? But I don't know how it would affect your performance. I mean, that's where you get into the practice and the figuring out what you do. And then once you figure that out, never change anything at a competition. That is not the place to be trying new stuff. You need to be running your game and flying what you practiced. And if you're wiggling around between runs trying to figure out what's different, what can I do better, that does not work for me. I have to be consistent, or it blows it all out of the water. So starting with 0 or 10 degrees of flaps, I start with 0 just for the drag aspect of you want all that thrust pushing you, accelerating you, and not deflected down into the ground.
That makes sense. And he says, yes, he is a nose wheel configuration. So that would line up. Dude, I think we only have time. We have like, he says acceleration was what I was asking. I didn't think about the tail disturbances. Makes sense. Look at you're helping this young man out, Jay.
Now he's going to beat me next time.
Well, but you're in different classes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you're safe. You can give him all your secrets. Can we play a quick game before we sign off for the night?
Absolutely.
All right, so the game is called Short Final. It's a minute on the clock. I'm going to ask you some short answer questions. There's no points, so you've already won. Kind of like whatever happens at the next National STOL. I'm sure you've already won that one.
I
the
doubt
next
it.
one you go to. Okay, let me get this set up here. Get some dramatic music playing. That might be echoing. I'm actually going to turn that off. All right, here we go. Jay, time for Short Final. First of all, favorite warbird you've ever flown in?
Mustang.
Oh, nice. What about favorite airport you've ever landed at?
Either Keokuk or Sedona.
Oh, Sedona's a very popular one. Okay. Favorite passenger you've ever had?
David Marco.
I have no idea who that is. We'll talk about that in a second. What about track up or north up?
I'm definitely a track up guy.
Oh, okay, very good. I'm a north up. Well, I'm a both. Sometimes I'm both. What about if you weren't flying the Cub that you built behind you for STOL? What would be your dream STOL airplane other than what you've got?
I'd like to have a really hopped up Carbon Cub. I've got some ideas.
Okay. So call you.
Yeah, let's talk.
All right, Carbon Cub. I'm sure you're watching. Jay, I said I'm approving it. You can give Jay a new Carbon Cub.
Yeah, sure.
Just put it on my tab.
Yeah.
Wait, so who's this person? This person that I didn't know? Who was that?
He's a really he's the guy that took me for the ride in the Mustang, and I got a chance to take him for a ride in the Lancer. And if you ever are around him, he'll tell you the story that was the most terrified he's ever been in an airplane. And there's more to it than that, but that's as far as I'm going. It's perfectly safe, but he was scared to death. Single controls, a little Lancer 360 that we built, and got to take him for a ride in it. And I think that was probably my most fun ride.
Okay, maybe we'll have him on the show and he can tell us all about it. Jeffrey Jensen, by the way, says track up because you have no electronic equipment in the plane.
Well, like I said, I carry a GPS in the airplane. So right now it's got a 796 with a GDL 39 in it for weather and traffic and getting there. And then I got it all on a ram ball, take it out, put it in the tent, then go fly. That's like 4 pounds, man. You got to get that weight out of the airplane.
This is the thing I forgot to mention. Like, we were talking about putting GoPros on your aircraft at Sun and Fun, and you at first I was like, "Hey, can I do this?" And you're like, "I don't know, man. That's like, what do those weigh? Like a pound? Like I don't want that. That's gonna mess me up." And I was like, okay, chill out. Like, don't worry. I'm sorry. Fair point. Because if you're dialed in on a certain weight and you add a couple pounds, that's gonna change it.
We go as far as to drain the gas every run and put a certain amount back in to keep us legal and keep us safe, but it's a consistent weight. You fly the airplane at a consistent weight. I mean, it's dialed in. I mean, I know I have 6 quarts of oil. I have so many gallons of gas, and that's how you practice. I mean, I will run 5 patterns, drain the gas, put the gas back in, check the oil. I mean, it sounds crazy, but everybody out there, you'll see all of us are out there with gas cans and draining gas and putting gas back in, and filling other people's airplanes up for fun. That's the running joke. I filled your airplane up for you.
Yeah, here you go. It's to the tabs.
Yeah. It's just to the tabs. You're good.
Tabs, you're good. I didn't go full up, just to the tabs though. So like it's fine. All right, Jay. That's all the time we have tonight. I feel like what we should do is we should have you on again, and we'll get the footage of like a circuit, and you can like talk us through it or something. I feel like we should do just like Jay teaches us how to be a STOL pilots debrief.com. That should be a thing we should do.
I don't know if I'm that well qualified. I'm still learning every time.
Well, it was super inspiring to watch you at Sun and Fun, and also just great to meet you. And I appreciate being on the show tonight. Yeah, thank you so much, man. It's so good to catch up.
You too, man. Thanks a lot, Ryan.
Everybody else, thank you so much for watching tonight with Jay from the STOL competitor, Jay. It is going to be an exciting couple weeks on SuperAero Live. Oh, Nathan Ballard, thank you very much. Ryan said if I donated $5 that Jay would give me a ride in the airplane. I did not say that, but you can take it up. You guys can work that out. Did not say that. Thank you so much for watching. The biggest thing, people ask me, what can I do to help? The biggest thing you can do to help with the show is, one, share it. Go share it with all your friends and your enemies, especially your enemies. Share it with them. That helps the show a ton. Make sure you're subscribed. Like 60% of you that watch the channel are not subscribed, and that would help a lot too. And then if you're really excited, check us out on Patreon. I've got the SuperAero Squadron on Patreon. You're seeing a lot of folks in the chat are from the squad. And we've got a Discord server. We chat about airplanes every day on Discord. We do a little Zoom call after the live shows to chat and hang out. And you get like a patch and some other stuff if I ever get off my butt and send them to you. So that's all super, super great ways to help, and I would really appreciate it. Make sure you tune in next week. We're going to have an aircraft manufacturer on. I just have to confirm that they are good to go, but hopefully that will be good to go. And the following week should be a really cool kind of grassroots aviation museum. So kind of covering all the different aspects of aviation on the show. Jay, again, I got to say thank you so much, man, for being on the show tonight. And hopefully I'll catch you at Osh or something. I don't know if you're making the trip, but it would be great to see you.
Yeah, man, I look forward to it. Try to make it over to New Holstein.
Yes, there we go. I'll add it. That should be, instead of a day at Osh, maybe I'll do a day at New Holstein. That would be worth it.
Come over for the STOL competition. It's very well done.
Well, maybe they need an announcer.
Never know.
Okay. All right, everybody.
I've never been on the ground for it, man, so I don't know. But
yeah, who knows what? You don't even know what. For all you know, then no one talks at all.
I've never heard you talk over the announcer booth either.
Oh man. Okay, we're gonna start a whole other conversation if we're not careful.
All right, we'll stop. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Dude, thank you so much. And everyone else, we'll see you next week. SuperAero Live.